Hey guys, we're here with Laura Spates, and her husband Jeremy Spates is the head coach at Southern Illinois University, Edwardsville, also known as SIUE. Hey Laura.
Hey, how's it going?
Good, how are you?
I am hanging in there.
Good, that's what we like to hear. So Laura, can you tell me how you and Jeremy met?
Yeah, we met actually in college. We both went to the same high school in Norman, Oklahoma, but we didn't know each other until we were in college. We had kind of the same group of friends. I was friends with his brother, too, and so we were friends for several years. We even took a road trip, some of my friends from Oklahoma, up to Mizzou to visit when he was still wrestling there. And then we started dating. He moved back to Oklahoma to work as an assistant coach at OU, and we started dating after he moved back. So that was around 2005.
Awesome. And his dad was the head coach at Oklahoma at the time, right?
He sure was. Yeah, he was the head coach at Oklahoma right up. I think he'd been there since maybe the mid-90s.
Yeah, he was a legend, or is a
sure.
legend for Oklahoma.
For sure. In our household, we call him Poppy.
I love it.
My daughter's grandpa.
Oh, that's so awesome. So what was y'all's first official date like?
Well, he asked me out eventually. He had been coming into the restaurant where I worked, a place called the Mont in Norman, Oklahoma. And he'd been coming in quite a bit and leaving me big tips. And some of my friends told me, that he might want to ask me out. And I was like, well, he just comes in and he doesn't really say anything and he hasn't asked for my number. So eventually a friend of ours was like, yeah, you should probably go ahead and call her if you're going to ask her out. And so he did. And we went, out to dinner at a restaurant called Charleston's in Norman. And then we came back to my house and hung out. And this was, I think, around the time of the OU Texas football game in 2005. And we stayed up late talking on my front porch.
Oh, I love that. That is a cute story, and I love how you remembered that it was around the OU Texas football game.
That's how we mark things in the fall, right?
Yes, I love it. I love it. I love college football, so I can relate to that. So what was the transition like for you guys going from Oklahoma, and then he went from Oklahoma to Cornell, correct, to coach?
Yeah, that's correct. So he's been in Oklahoma for several years, and I think it was right after NCAAs, he had, I guess, maybe bumped into Rob Cole at NCAAs, and he came back and he said, he was telling me, how much he loved living in Dryden, New York when he, because he grew up in Dryden, New York for many years, like through maybe his early elementary years through middle school. And that's near where Cornell is located. So he called me and he was like, well, so I got to talk to you about something. He was like, I don't know how much longer I'm going to be able to stay here at Oklahoma. And I got a phone call from, this coach, and he has an opportunity for me at Cornell. And I was like, okay, great. Where's that? And he's like, upstate New York. And I was like, And so, we kind of tossed the idea around, and he was like, well, if I decide I want to take this and move to New York, would you, want to move to New York too eventually? And so, we talked about it for a while. I still had another year of grad school at that time, but, we talked about it a while and eventually decided that, yeah, he was going to take that job. It was a great opportunity, moving back to a town that he had great memories of. And so I, at that point, sold my house. This was, after NCAA, so spring, early summer. And I sold my house and moved in with my mom so that I could crunch in all of my remaining graduate work that I had left. And I lived with my mom for a year, and we did long distance for a year. I went to visit quite a bit, and that was actually my first time to go to NCAAs, was his first year as an assistant coach at Cornell. So that was obviously a very exciting NCAAs to go for the first time.
I can imagine. What were your emotions heading into NCAA?
I was super excited, and then I was excited not only to go to NCAAs for the first time, but also to see him, because that was, we were long distance, so I hadn't seen him, I don't think, for a couple months. And then when we got there, to be a part of the Cornell fan club was pretty exciting too. I will say it was incredibly overwhelming going to NCAAs for the first time, especially the first round, trying to focus and figure out who's wrestling on what mat, because there's so many mats to focus on. Fortunately, I had Damien's wife, Terry. She is all-knowing with wrestling, and she'd already been at Cornell, so she was able to kind of talk me through and help direct me where to look. But it was definitely a very exciting first time to go to NCAAs, and a cool team to be there to support.
Oh, I can only imagine. I bet that is awesome. And yes, NCAAs can be super confusing, and I hate when you have two guys for the same team that are wrestling at the same time on different matches.
Gosh, right?
It's you can't, it's hard to focus on two matches going on at one time.
It is, and you're just I want to be in two places at once. I don't know where to look. You're looking here, and then you're afraid you're missing out on the other mat. And it's intense, but it's very cool. I mean, I definitely came out of that first experience with, I think, much greater respect for the sport and for Jeremy's job in general.
That's awesome. So did you have a background in wrestling prior to meeting Jeremy?
Not even a little bit. In fact, I don't know that I had ever been to any kind of wrestling match until we started dating, and I went to watch him coach as an assistant at Oklahoma.
And did you get hooked kind of right away?
I definitely got into it, yes. And I realized that there was a lot to learn because it was my first experience. So that's, when I got on the internet and tried to talk to people and just kind of tried to educate myself about the sport and the rules and what different things mean. And for a few years, every year when the season would start back up, I'd kind of have to give myself a mini tutorial
I'd love that.
to make sure I knew what was going on.
He picked a good wife in you. You did your homework. That is some dedication right there. I love that.
Well, it definitely took some time to feel like I really knew what people were talking about enough that I could even talk about it.
I understand that. So when did you move out to Cornell? You said you guys did a year of long distance?
Yeah, we did a year of long distance, a little over a year. I think he moved in June of 2009, and then I moved out. I was finally graduated and done with grad school in August of 2010. So he actually flew down, I guess he drove down. So he drove all the way from upstate New York, and we had a car to sell. So we sold that car, and then he actually flew back, and then he flew back again when it was time for us to move. So we packed up all the rest of the stuff in my car, and we drove, I think it was probably the first few weeks of August we drove out. But right before we drove out, he called my dad and he called my mom and he asked them permission, to ask me to marry him. And so right before we drove out to New York, he proposed. And then we had, a going away party, which turned into kind of like a engagement party.
Yeah.
With all of our friends, which was awesome because it was the last time, we'd be there for a while. And then on the drive out to New York, we were talking about, having a wedding. We were talking about health insurance. And he was like, what if we just went ahead and got married now? and then we could have a big like wedding or party later. And so about a week after we got to upstate New York, I called the City Hall of Dryden, and I was like, hey, I'm looking for a judge. We're interested in coming down there and getting married. And the judge was, so I finally got the judge on the phone, and he was telling me his availability. And I was like, well, what about this Wednesday? And he was like, you want to get married on a Wednesday? And I was like, sure, why not? And so we got married, I think it was Wednesday, August 18th, 2010, about a week after we moved to upstate New York. And then a year later, we had a big wedding party in Oklahoma with all our family and friends.
Oh, I love that. That's a really cool story. And I bet going ahead and doing it the year prior kind of made the transition with moving with insurance and everything probably a heck of a lot easier.
It definitely did. And it was memorable. We had our witnesses were Damien and Terry Hahn.
Aww.
So, yeah, they came and they were our witnesses, and then we went and celebrated at the Dryden Hotel afterwards. So,
oh, that is such an awesome story.
It was a special time. It was a special time.
That.
A lot of transition. I mean, the move wasn't easy. I definitely had a hard time transitioning, being away from my family and friends, and kind of figuring out who I was in this new version of my life, which definitely took some time. But I think, you know, we're both happy that it's turned out the way that it has.
What a blessing. I love that. So Jeremy was at Cornell for 5 years?
Yeah, he moved there the summer of 2009, and then we moved here in the summer of 2013. We moved to Southern Illinois.
So how was that transition for you guys going from upstate New York to Southern Illinois?
Well, I must confess, I did not love the weather in upstate New York. A lot of gray days were hard on me. A lot of cold weather and a lot of snow I didn't love. But I did love the job that I finally got there. It took me a while to I did my internship my first year there. And like I said, it was a hard transition for me. But I had finally gotten a job that I loved in a little town called Groton. I was a psychologist for the middle school and the high school there. So I kind of felt like I had finally gotten into the swing of, you know, my career and my new, like, identity as an upstate New Yorker. And then Jeremy got a phone call from his dad. I think it was his dad saying, hey, this head coaching job is opening up in Southern Illinois. And Jeremy was like, I don't know, man. I love it here. And he did. I mean, he absolutely loved working at Cornell, and he loved, you know, his colleagues, the coaches, and the guys he was coaching. And
the fan base, Cornell fan base, they are die hard.
Oh, it's such a special program, and it was such a special thing to be a part of. So he had a lot of conversations, I think, with his dad and probably, you know, some of his other mentors, trying to go back and forth as to whether or not he should apply. And eventually, you know, we talked, and he decided he was going to fly down here and he was going to do the interview and scope it out. And I was like, okay, here we go again, maybe. And he called me and he was like, Laura, you're going to love it here. It's beautiful. The weather's going to be warmer. I think this is a really good opportunity for me to come in and work with this, like, once legendary program, and maybe really build it back up into something. And
absolutely.
So, you know, I Google mapped it and I Googled it and I did my research to kind of figure out where we were going, and I realized it was just an 8-hour drive from Southern Illinois back to Oklahoma. So instead of having to take 3 flights to get back home and spend a fortune, I would be able to, you know, make the drive in a day when I wanted to go visit my family. So that was a definite bonus.
Nice. Oh, yeah, I bet that was.
That was a definite bonus. So we did, you know, over the course of that summer, I think it was late May or early June when we decided we were going to go for it. And we, you know, tried to fix up our house in New York and get that on the market and pack up our stuff. And he came on down here and started working, and they put us up in the dorm for a month. And I think it was probably the very, very beginning of August, maybe the first or second week, we drove all the way down here with our 2 cats and moved into the dorm, which was actually a really nice dorm. I mean, it was not like a one-room dorm. It was more like an apartment with a living room and a kitchen and 2 bedrooms.
Oh, that's nice.
And so we were there for a month until they found out that we had our cat, and we had to quickly find another place to stay where we could keep our cats, which we did. But I loved it here, and the saving grace for me when we were living in the dorm were all these walking, running, biking trails they have around the city. It's just, there are lots of outside activities and opportunities to do things outside. So I really enjoyed that our first month here.
I can imagine. So what kind of transitions or things did you see in Jeremy growing as he took on the role of head coach from assistant coach?
I mean, Jeremy was always hustling and always working hard. And I think that was, one of the things that I admired and loved about him was what a hard worker he was. But I think getting to see him start to, make some of the big decisions himself and be able to delegate things to people. I think he started to grow into a stronger leader once he was, given those opportunities, to make the call.
Absolutely. Well, he's doing wonderful things with the program. I mean, he's growing it. He's building it. It's been fun to watch. And with that being said, what kind of role do you play with the wrestlers as the head coach's wife?
It definitely has been growing, and it's been exciting to see. His first year here, he got the heavyweight wrestler to NCAAs. So that was one of their first years of actually since transitioning to Division I. And then, shortly thereafter, they've had more and more wrestlers qualify for the national tournament. So that's been exciting to watch as the program grows. And they have a really strong alumni base who are super involved with the program, and that's been exciting to be a part of. So I've gotten to get to know some really cool people who have been affiliated with the program for a long time. And, as the coach's wife, as any coach's wife, there's a lot of travel. So there's a lot of time when I'm, holding down the homestead and he's out hustling and wrestling and working. And as far as my involvement with the program, we have the guys over for dinner. We have recruits over for dinner. We try to make it to all the wrestling matches. We've driven to a few that are drivable to watch. And just, he'll have one or two of the guys over from time to time to kind of hang out and talk about stuff. So, having, an open door to the guys when they want or need to come over. That's, my involvement.
That's got to be extremely helpful when you guys are recruiting, to know, especially for the parents of the athletes, to know that you guys have an open door policy, and if their athlete needs anything, that y'all are only a phone call away or walk over to your house.
Yeah, definitely. And it's been that setting when we have the recruits over with their parents, it's easier to kind of get to know people than it is when you're like going out to dinner at a restaurant and it's loud and you're in one seat the whole time. You're not necessarily sitting next to somebody. You're not going to get to sit next to everybody and get to know them as well. So being able to kind of have them into our home, I think gives them an idea, of who we are and gives them the opportunity to get to know us.
Absolutely. I really like that you guys do that. And you guys have one of my favorite wrestlers wrestling for y'all, Justin Ruffin. Yes.
Oh, he's super cool.
Yes, he's a sweetheart.
Oh, he's awesome. It's been fun having him as a part of the program and getting to know him, and his dad's super cool too. Oh, yeah, the whole family. They're great. So you guys have a young daughter, correct? We do. Vivian is about to turn 3 on May 9th. Oh, happy early birthday, Vivian. Yeah. And she'll tell you, it's her birthday in May. She's going to be 3.
Oh, I love it. So how has that kind of been for you, adjusting and adding on the responsibilities of being a mom as well?
That has been a lot. It is no easy feat to be a parent. It's not for the faint of heart, especially having a husband who travels a lot. You know, there's a lot of time where it's, you know, just me. You know, it's just me at home handling things. We're fortunate that my mom retired in 2017 and actually moved up to Edwardsville last summer and wound up buying a house 3 doors down from us.
Oh, that's awesome.
So we've been quarantining with her, and she has been helping us tremendously because we're still working, you know, from home. So she's been keeping Vivi in the morning so we can kind of hustle and get our paperwork and our meetings out of the way. So I will say we are very fortunate. So this hasn't been a hardship on us. It's we're some of the lucky ones in this time where everybody's at home. I know a lot of my colleagues are at home with multiple young children and trying to work at the same time, and it's definitely a challenge.
Yeah, I can't even imagine. That is definitely a blessing that you guys have your mom so close by.
It has been. It's been nice. What has been hard is not being able to have other family members come visit. I know Jeremy's dad called right at the beginning of all this, and he was thinking about coming to visit, and we just weren't sure how safe that was at the time. So we weren't able to, you know, say, yeah, sure, come on. So that was hard, and we really are missing, you know, our extended family and our colleagues. And I know Jeremy really misses the guys on the team. But he's been having virtual, you know, Zoom meetings with the guys, and they've been talking about the different workouts that they've been doing. And Jeremy's gotten into yoga recently to try and keep himself up. So we're exploring, you know, different avenues during this time.
That is awesome. I love that he's getting into yoga. What a perfect time to try new things.
Right? His younger sister, Jenny's actually a yoga teacher, and she was trying to get him into yoga for years. And, you know, he was like, well, you know, I do enough working out at work because he still works out with the wrestlers. And, but now that he isn't able to work out with the guys all the time, he has finally found a space for yoga. So he says that he feels like it's done a lot of good things for his body.
Oh, yeah. I personally love yoga. It's good for getting you stretched out.
Same here.
Right? So with that being said, can you tell me something about Jeremy that most people probably don't know?
Ooh, that's a good question. Well, this is something that probably the people who work with him now know, and people who follow him on social media know, but he is an excellent juggler.
Okay, I think I saw a video of that.
That's right. He can juggle 3 apples and even take a bite of one of the apples and keep juggling.
No way. That's awesome.
It's very impressive. He says he learned it so he could have a cool party trick when he was in high school, I think.
That's an incredible story. That's great. Thank you so much.
I'm sure there are other things. I'm sure there are other things that people don't know, but that's just the first thing that comes to mind.
I love it. That's great, and I would not have thought that looking at his picture that he can juggle 3 apples and take a bite of one.
Very, very impressive skill.
I agree. Well, thank you so much, Laura. We appreciate you allowing us to interview you.
Yeah, it was great talking with you. Thank you.